Select Board meeting. I will be asking for a roll call at this time.
Frank West here.
Elaine Maselli here.
Greg Bendel here.
Kevin Kyra here.
Gary DePalma here. I'd like to, at this time, turn the floor over to Mr. Bendel for a moment of silence for Charles Lyons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As many of you know, that last week we mourned the passing of former Shawshene Tech Superintendent Charlie Lyons, passed away last week at the age of 70. And as many of you know, Charlie served as superintendent for 28 years at Shawshene. He served hundreds and thousands of Shawshene students, parents, and small businesses here in Wilmington during his time. In fact, he was no stranger to this very room where he fiercely advocated for funding for Shawshene in front of the Finance Committee and town meeting for 28 years. He was a fierce advocate for Shawshene, for vocational ed, and for all of education across Massachusetts. So he was a great partner to the town. And as many of you know, that as politically, Charlie was the first person in the United States to be elected as an 18-year-old to elected office as an 18-year-old member of the Arlington School Committee, where he served 9 years before serving 24 years on the Arlington Board of Selectmen. And so Charlie had a very unique, larger-than-life presence about him, a very unique leadership style, and he was a great advocate for the Shawshene and Wilmington. And I had the good fortune of witnessing a lot of this for firsthand for nearly 2 decades. He was a great mentor of mine. Even after his retirement, he would keep a close eye on all things Wilmington politics, and he had no problem calling me up and telling me if I had made a mistake. But he also gave great advice, and so he was a great boss, probably the greatest boss you could ever ask for, but he was also my friend. And so I appreciate the opportunity to offer a moment of silence on behalf of the board, and our condolences to Leanne, Christine, Lisa, and Michael, and the entire Lyons family for former Shawshene Tech Superintendent Charlie Lyons.
Thank you. Now I'll ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to take a moment to acknowledge from Boy Scouts Troop 136, Scout David McClaren, and Scoutmaster John Wallace, and Mrs. Wallace. Now we have transmission of Treasury warrants. Treasury warrant number 2413. 2413W, 2413T, 2413S, 2414, 2414W, and 2414T. Do you have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Approved. There are no minutes to approve tonight. We will go right to our appointments. Our first appointment will be a hearing. Peter Price, System Engineer, Reading Municipal Light Department. Read a public hearing for a request of Reading Municipal Light and Verizon New England, Inc. to relocate 12 poles and locate 1 pole on Lowell Street. Is anyone here from? Why don't you come right up here, sir? Have a seat. Now I'm going to ask for I'm going to entertain a motion that we open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? The hearing is now open. You want to move a number of poles.
Yes, it's in conjunction with the Mass DOT project at Lowell and Woburn Street. We need to relocate these poles for them to proceed with their project.
And Tommy, I know Beverly usually does this, but all the information that you need, do you have for this?
As far as the signatures go,
Yes.
Jeff, you
There was no requirement in this particular instance for the notification. So this one, this is part of the Lowell Street and Woburn Street intersection project. You'll recall there's been a lot of work done to date in terms of obtaining easements from the various property owners in that stretch, and this work will assist in that effort. We have a memo from Paul Looney, the town engineer, where he outlines the work to be done, notes that Mass DOT has reviewed and approved this work, as has the DPW, and specifically Paul Looney recommends that the board authorize this. It's also noted here that as this work continues, and it will continue for some period of time beyond the pole relocation, DPW on their website has a 3-week look ahead, so folks can go to the wilmingtonma.gov /public works and get updates on work to be done.
Okay. Any comments from the public at all? When do you anticipate you'll be starting this?
2 to 3 weeks after we have the signed document back.
Do any of the board members have any questions? Go ahead, Mr. Kyra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through probably a first question to Mr. Hull, there's going to be sidewalks along this new project,
Yes.
and will the poles be located in the sidewalks, which I don't like it at all.
Most of
You
them
know,
will
it's
be
just-
located behind the sidewalk.
Most.
Yeah.
So how many in the sidewalk, how many
If they're
outside?
placed in the sidewalk, they've been placed with to be in ADA compliance, so they have enough room to get a plow or wheelchair, whatever else is needed.
Okay, all right, because most of the poles I see now are smack dab in the middle of the sidewalk and, you know, it's- should
Yeah,
be
we've worked
moved.
that out with the state, they're pointing out different things and where they wanted the pole, so, we've worked that out with them.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr.
Just,
West.
thank you. It's just a quick question. Are all these poles going to be permanent poles, or are these temporary going to be moved again after the intersections?
Permanent.
Okay. And do you anticipate any other poles? being
There'll be
moved?
another petition coming forward from Verizon for poles on Woburn Street, with Reading Lights taking care of the poles on Lowell Street. Verizon will be taking care of the poles on Woburn Street. So I think they're trying to get onto your next board meeting for a hearing.
And I agree with Selectman Kyra as far as the Select Board Member Kyra, as far as, you know, sidewalks and telephone poles, because you walk along and all of a sudden there's a pole in the middle of the road, and you have people that got baby carriages and whatever. It's just,
Yes, and the state pointed that out to make sure that that was all met.
thank you.
Any other questions from
No,
members?
I'm okay.
Okay. Go ahead. Can you come up to the,
Baby carriages,
could you come up to the microphone, please?
do I have to, I'm pretty,
It's for the TV.
Say it out loud. Go ahead. No, sit.
all right.
Go ahead.
Identify
Yeah.
yourself.
I just have a concern for people.
Your name and address first, please.
Robin Theodos, 73 Clark Street, Wilmington.
Thank you.
I have concern for people in wheelchairs. You know, carriages, you have control, you can get around a pole maybe, but wheelchairs, how are people supposed to navigate out into the street or off into somebody's yard? That's my concern, that's all. You guys do what you want, but I had to voice that.
That was
Respond?
addressed with the state. They had to make sure the poles were, the
All
sidewalks were ADA compliant.
ADA compliance. Everything's gonna be ADA compliant, so they'll be within their rights. Any other questions? Mr. Hull, do you have anything you'd like to say?
No, this is a project that we endorse as part of the overall intersection improvements project.
I'll close it, right. At this time, I'm gonna close the public hearing.
Chairman, I'll move that we close the public hearing.
Second. All those in favor? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you
Have a
very
nice-
much.
You actually have to take a
You do
vote
the motion.
Oh, wait a minute. Check, I forgot about that. Now I'll ask for a motion to accept
I'll
the
make a
appeal
motion,
poll relocations.
I'll make a motion to approve.
So move, second.
All those in favor?
Thank you, have a good
Thank
night.
you. And our next appointment is with Elizabeth Lawrenson, Town Clerk. This is regarding the precincts 3 and 4, the moving of precincts 3 and 4.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Lawrenson. Nice to see you all. Thank you for having me here today. As we had met previously, I believe it was in March, so I could update you that Jeff and I were concerned with the traffic at the location of precinct 3 and 4, Boutwell and the Town Hall. We looked at several different options. So the election dates for the 2024 year, we have the presidential primary March 5th, the local election, the state primary, and the presidential election on November 5th. We spoke and met, Jeff and I, with Public Buildings and with the school department and discussed the possibility of using the high school. I also looked into, on the suggestion of Select Board Member Kyra, to look at the 4th of July building and the senior center. So, I'm gonna give you a little bit of information on the estimated voter activity. So, precincts are estimated to vote early by mail or in person, precincts 3 and 4 between 800 to 900 voters per precinct. Our major concern is the presidential election, not so much the primaries. They were manageable in a traffic sense, but the presidential election is usually around 80%. I went back to 2010, and that percentage has been, for voter turnout, has been pretty consistent, early voting or not. And so that would bring us up if you, the voters are estimated to vote the day of the presidential election for precincts 3 and 4 between 1,500 and 2,000 for each precinct. I got those numbers by going back in the history and the data of voter turnout. Again, 80% for a presidential election. However, the number of voters in Wilmington is 1,811. And precinct 4, the number in precinct 4 voters is 2,831. Precinct 3, excuse me. Precinct 4, the number of voters is 3,072. The last presidential election, we had between 33 and 36% who voted early. So that, as I calculated, that's where I came with 1,500 to 2,000 per precinct throughout the day. So Wilmington High School, the advantage is, I met with Bridget Murphy from the Secretary of Commonwealth's office, and she evaluated the 3 sites. It is a modern facility, it's ADA compliant. We've evaluated the parking area because it is going to be a school in session, at least on the primaries. I'll get into that a bit more as we go along. But we're going to be reserving 55 spaces for voter parking, and they'll be the ones closest to the event entrance where they will be coming in and out. We did evaluate 2 separate entrances to the gym, but I felt as though the walk was a long walk to get all the way around into the gym entrance in the back where the bleachers were. And I felt like it would be a hardship for someone that maybe they're not in a wheelchair, but they have mobility issues. And that was just, I felt too long, and we discussed it as a group, and we agreed. So we're reserving 55 spaces. We presented our request to the school committee. They gave their approval. They have not approved the calendar yet, so I cannot promise a November 5th closure, but that's what we're going to ask for the presidential, to help with parking and to help with traffic. So the high school, the spot we're looking at is the gym, so we have the ability to isolate voting areas from the student body, and I can show that a little bit further on with a flow chart created by the engineering department. It's large enough to keep the precincts separated, which is really important for us. There's no improvements, it's ADA compliant to the facility as needed. So again, school committee will be voting on the next year's calendar. We'll be asking to close the schools on November 5th. And the challenges, construction of the new town hall school admin building will begin in the Swain parking lot. So there's going to be 36 staff members that are gonna need to park over there. Dr. Brandt has suggested that they are going to tell the students not to drive to school on election days. So that would free that parking lot up. We're gonna be needing an additional detail officer to direct traffic. I don't know if any of you, how often you go to the high school. I know you go once a year for the meeting, but it can get a bit confusing, and I'm reserving spots for the teachers. And I'm gonna be having that detailed officer maintaining the entranceway into the teachers' area so that he can make sure they're staff members and not voters that are just trying to, are confused and just trying to vote, to park where they can. This isn't gonna be an added expense, because if you know, historically, we've always had 3 sites, we've always had 3 detail officers, we'll have 3 detail officers that day. This is the flow chart I was referring to. If you look, I don't know if this is working correctly. If you look at the entranceway with the arrows, we're gonna be completely separating the student body from where the bathrooms are all the way through the middle. I actually measured the hallway to make sure we had enough space to be ADA compliant, and there is. We need 5 feet on each side, and we have, it's 13-foot width, so we have, you know, close to 7, 6.5 feet on each side. So that, and George Hooper has informed me that he has barriers, and I have stanchions. His barriers are a little more solid to prevent traffic flow from veering it into one another. So the voters will be going all the way in, into the gym, around, voting, around and out. There won't be in the rest of the building. There are entranceways into the dining hall in other areas as well, which they'll encourage the students to use, as well as this smaller pathway. And really, we're talking about the lunch hour and during school hours. We've talked with the superintendent about not having athletics or any type of after-school activities during Election Day. So it would limit the nighttime traffic and parking and issues that we may have. So 4th of July building, I did evaluate them. It's 1 level, angle of the entry ramp is in compliance. The exit needs some type of banister installed to bring it up to, it kind of slopes towards a hazardous area. Someone in a wheelchair, it would need to have more of a barrier to stop it from going forward. It kind of goes out and turns. The exit ramp has been damaged from plows and will need repairs in order to bring it up to code. And that would be the exit. So they'd come in the building and they'd exit out towards the parking lot. The parking is limited due to construction. I'm concerned about the construction during that time. We'll have 150 spaces in that parking lot after they put up the construction fencing. And that doesn't include the Swain Green, because they're gonna be laying down the steel materials in that area. That area won't be available to the public. So I'm concerned about that. We are gonna need a detailed officer at each site, so this would increase, again, we'd have 4 detailed officers instead of 3. Elderly Services is ADA compliant. The parking is very tight. Again, you're gonna have down below 150 spaces. If it's inclement weather, they're walking up a hill. So there are, I don't know how often you've all gone to the elderly building, but you go in and around. So it could get confusing when the traffic is high. Again, I'm not concerned about the primaries. I'm more focused on what's gonna happen during the presidential.
Sure.
So if you so choose to allow this change and to move these 2 precincts to the high school, Jeff wanted me to just give a brief explanation of how we're gonna notify the public. So we're required by law to mail a postcard to each household, which we will do. I did budget for that because the last couple of years we've had some challenges and those postcard mailings have popped up. So last year I decided to budget for it. Notice will be put on the website. We'll use the Rotary Board. When we get close to elections, I'd like to send out an e-alert. We'll use Everbridge to alert precincts 3 and 4 right before the election, or elections, depending on what you would wish for us to do. Keep in mind that anyone that has not opted into Everbridge will not get a phone call or email. I did speak to Jamie McGaldy, who uses it quite often for his construction projects. And I can isolate it to the precincts. It doesn't have to bother every household in town. I can, it is a way, they give you a map on your screen and you kind of map out what areas you want to have alerted. So that would make it a little bit more convenient. And we use our social media quite a bit now, so we'll use that to alert the public that there has been a change. Where can they click on the, we'll have a link to the Secretary of the Commonwealth's website that shows your voter registration status and where you vote. So you enter in your name and your birth date, and it pops it up. And it gives you all the information you need, the location, the address. Because I'm required, once this is voted on and approved, I'm required to send this into the Secretary of Commonwealth, and I have to go on and change the precinct locations in the database. So that database is linked to their website. So once I make my changes, the public, what the public sees will be updated as well. So, that's it. That's all I have for you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Go ahead, Mr. West.
First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. I think it's a wise decision personally. One of the things I was curious about was for notifications. I didn't see anything about, and I'm assuming that you're going to talk, but the newspaper, the patch.
Yes, and I didn't include that.
the
I
Apple-
am going to do a press release on and sending it to the Apple. Jeff suggested today that we take advantage of Recreation Matters and the elderly newsletter that they send out, and there's Town Topics as well. So we will try to take advantage. I am going to be putting it on the census for those 2 precincts, not just this is your polling location, but your polling location has changed. It is now in more loud colors in the census, because I know that goes to every household, so. But I'm only doing that for those 2 precincts. I'm not going to do it for the whole town, obviously, because that precinct hasn't changed.
And what about, is it possible to put something like maybe where the tennis court is or something like that, something nice
They
and
have
big?
that bulletin board that the
Yeah.
school uses, and they say welcome back or be kind.
yeah.
Or when they have plays, we could possibly talk to the superintendent and ask if they would mind putting out precincts that would be voting there. And
We have the electronic sign too, that I think would be advantageous for us to use, just so people know, especially as the day goes on, as we get a little later in the evening. I think that would be
Yeah,
good use of it.
one last thing I was just wondering about is the current precincts, is there a way to put a sign that says move to?
yes, we did that. I think you even worked those elections. We did that when we moved from the Wildwood. We had banners made. One was put at the Wildwood that said precincts 3 and 4. Precincts 3 is now here, and precinct 4 is now here. We did do that, and we did have people pull up, and were unaware. I mean, people live busy lives, so, or maybe, they were weren't as, busy at work or whatever. So we did have people pull up, and it was helpful. And we will have them again at the high school and the other 2 schools. So.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, just
Ira?
thank you for the presentation as well. You had mentioned that you're hoping that the school is closed that day. Is that?
That is a purview of the school committee. We are going to ask.
Right.
Dr.
Okay.
Brand has expressed he thinks that's a good idea, and, but they just haven't voted on their calendar yet.
Okay, so if the school is closed, Would-
Just for November only.
just for November 5th.
Mhm.
The school is closed November 5th only.
Mhm.
Would it make sense to have the election in the cafeteria rather than on the gym floor? I'm a little concerned, but if the school is open, then what is going to happen with the gym floor? Will it be covered? Did you drill down to that with?
George has assured me that he can cover the floor, that they have material that
There's
they
mats.
use.
It would be similar to, recall in prior instances where the old gym was used, they put that, I would expect something along those lines, the kind of plastic material that goes down over the floor.
Would you consider going to the caf? It would be closer. They wouldn't
Not
have to
yet.
walk further down to the gym area if they're coming in the front way or the.
We could consider
sideway.
using the cafeteria for the November election. It wouldn't be a a large issue. You have to walk in through it anyway. It's not as if anyone's gonna get confused and not realize where they're walking to. We use stanchions and barriers and signs to kind of guide the public where they need to be. And we also have greeters, so we could have, it's not, as long as it's not moving the location, we can legally do that. We can.
Yeah, no, I just want to try to save any type of scuffing on that
Sure.
floor, no matter how much you protect it.
It would be less work for public buildings as well.
There you
so.
go. All right, so that works. And you mentioned about athletics, to Mr. Brand about canceling athletics. I might suggest that, depending upon youth sports, we have the Entile Turf Field, the Glen Road, the Shawshene, the Woburn Street. I mean, we have other alternatives for if they really need a practice. And I don't even know if there's game schedule on that Tuesday out on the high school field and how that may affect you. I don't know if you've talked to him about that, and they could move maybe to a different location for a game.
It was my understanding, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but once it was approved, we were going to reach out to the schools for the athletic director to find out how far in advance he sets his calendar. Because I think it is, I could be wrong, but I think it has to coordinate with other towns as well if they have games. So, and obviously they can't use the gym. So that's definitely not an option, but there could be football, September. There could be other events going on that I don't know about. So that was our intent. It was a list of things, of concerns that we need to address once it's approved. One of the other things is we're having my workers be Cory checked, so that the voters don't, we don't have to provide restrooms to the voters, but my workers, some of them are there for 15 hours, so they need to go throughout the schools, so they need to have ability to somewhere to eat lunch, somewhere. So our resolution to that was to Cory check them. Anyone working at the high school will be Cory checked. The Boutwell will be closed, so that's not an issue.
And then just one last suggestion. How many poll workers do you usually have? About,
There are
just a ballpark.
6 per precinct, so 12 per site.
Okay, and I know you have an issue with a number of parking spots, and I don't know where the workers are gonna be designated to park, but I do know behind the building, where the loading dock is, there's parking there and easy access to the CAF and gym. If you took those 12 cars and located them there,
I did
it
speak
might
to-
save you some room.
Yeah, I did speak to Public Buildings regarding that. He referenced Chief Kavanaugh and keeping that area clear. He said there's an area that the custodial staff parks back there, and that's fine. I can address it again with Chief Kavanaugh and find out if there is an area that he would be comfortable with, as long as they have access to get out and around, I guess. That was what was, he said they were asked not to do that anymore.
Right, well, that
So
was.
and I really haven't
I
followed up
understand
on
why
it.
that was done, because there was a football game where there was an emergency and the vehicles couldn't get in, and that became a real issue with the injured athlete. But in this case, if there's no events going on in the field, there's plenty of room back there, I believe.
And to be honest, I didn't follow up with the chief. I spoke with Dennis and George, and that's what was their response, was that they were asked not to park there. We could look at it again. I could meet him out there and take a look at it again, and he might have a suggestion that would work for both of us.
I'm just, trying to
Yeah,
save
I
you some space.
suspect the
that's all.
issue would be just general, if there's some kind of a issue with the building where there's a need to get fire apparatus in the back of the building, it would perhaps be a problem if there were cars parked there, but certainly worth checking.
And I could see if some of the election workers, we have plenty of spaces at the Swain. There's spaces behind the library, that extra parking lot behind the library. I am actually going to be talking to the sign holders to see if they could please try not to park where the voters are parking. That happens quite often during the presidential and the primaries, the presidential primary and the state primary. We have people that come out with initiative petitions, we have people that come out with signs. I have in the past driven around and asked them not to park where the voters are coming in and out. That is another option that, I mean, granted, some of my workers need to be closer to the building, but some can walk across the common with ease. So I could ask them and reach out to them and ask them if they are able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I only mentioned that area because it is close.
It
It's a
is
very
clo- yeah.
clo- and your
I actually
workers-
brought it up,
your
so you're
workers
not
just have
off.
to
I
go
did
right
bring
over
it up.
there. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman,
Right.
one other thing real quick is that what we could do is maybe for the 2 meetings prior to each election, we could make a mention of it. Just, again, a lot of people watch the meeting, so I'm just thinking.
Yeah, we did that in the last elections also.
And lastly, our partner WCTV, you know, we could maybe do a PSA or something like that, or if they could do some block, promotion on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mrs. Lawrence, and for the presentation and for your thoughtfulness here and the extra efforts of you and your staff to make this happen. So I look forward to supporting your
Thank you for
request.
your time tonight.
Same, I echo.
Any
Just
other-
thank you for all the work. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Do I hear a motion to accept the precinct 3 and 4 moving to the high school?
Motion?
Mr. Chair, you want to take board to
Yeah, board
consider
six.
number 6?
Yes, I meant,
Uh,
and the board consider authorize of change of voting locations for residents in precincts 3 and 4 to the high school, school gym.
Motion to move?
Second?
And that's with, just, that could be the cafeteria, though, as
It
well.
could be, yes.
Okay, so can we amend that to say gymnasium/cafeteria?
That would just be for the November election.
Yeah.
Right, right.
The address is the same, so I think,
Yeah.
You could do it for the address if you'd like. That's easier.
Would that be better? Or just do it like it is and, or do it
Amended
by
just
the
say
address?
just the high school.
The address.
Just Wilmington High School.
Oh, geez, I don't know offhand. Just reference the high school.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll, board to consider authorizing of change of voting location for residents in precincts 3 and 4 to the high school.
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank you.
night.
Next appointment is Valerie Gendrich, and the Planning and Conservation Director. This is regarding the multifamily zoning of MBTA communities, Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3A.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. And would you like to explain to us?
Yeah, I'm Valerie Gingrich, the Director of Planning and Conservation, and I'll let Alex
And-
introduce himself.
Alex Weissite from KP Law.
Hey, Alex.
And here tonight to give you an update on where we are with the Section 3A zoning district. So just a little recap before we get into the most recent. Section 3A was enacted in 2021, and it requires an as-of-right multifamily housing district. And in 2022, DHCD, which is now EOHLC, and I call them HLC for short, issued final guidelines for compliance with Section 3A. And the goal of Section 3A is to combat the state's housing crisis by allowing more housing near transit. So what does this mean for Wilmington specifically? Wilmington has to have a zoning district of at least 50 acres. That zoning district has to have a capacity of 1,248 units. Half of the unit capacity has to be within a half mile of the train station, and it requires a minimum gross density of 15 units per acre, and all of this has to be in place before the end of 2024. The Attorney General's office has advised towns that there's no opt-out ability for this, that it has to be complied with. or towns will face civil enforcement action and liability under federal and state fair housing laws. I previously told this board that I would sort of provide some context on how there were some questions about existing 40B developments and how they could be included or not in a district like this. And again, I guess for just a reminder, and for those at home, this is a zoning requirement, right? So we're not necessarily concerned with what is on the ground and built today, or what the topic is, allowing for a future redevelopment of an area to include multifamily housing. So, but I ran through sort of our existing 40B developments and the challenge with them, and we want to include some of those because it's existing multifamily, it's, appropriate to have some of those areas within the district. The challenge is that they're 40B developments, they're affordable, they're not compliant with zoning currently, and that keeps them affordable, right? So we don't want to make them, by creating a new zoning district, make them comply with zoning and then have the potential for losing that affordability.
Right.
So I did some file research and sort of went through the list of our 40B developments and kind of figured out the parameters at which, they would stay non-compliant. So Metro 10 Burlington, that stays non-compliant if we set a maximum height of 35 feet. So it's taller than 35 feet, so if we say the maximum height is 35 feet, it doesn't comply. Similarly, for Regency Place on West Street, if we're setting the height maximum at 40 feet, it's above 40 feet currently, so it doesn't comply. West Street, the corner, 100 and 104, was approved at 4 stories in the front, kind of 5 stories in the back, and with less than 2 parking spaces per unit. So a 3-story maximum height, that development wouldn't comply. Princeton development was approved at 4 stories. Again, if we have a maximum height of 3 stories, that wouldn't comply. And then Avalon Oaks, the one on Ballardville Street, that's located within the Groundwater Protection District, which requires a special permit for development in that area, so it wouldn't, we wouldn't rezone that area. And Avalon Oaks West, which is on Salem Street, that development is higher than 35 feet, so if we had a 35-foot maximum, that would stay non-compliant. So that's some of the research done on those and a little context. You'll see a few of these later on. So to get sort of the feedback of the community, we put out a survey later August, and I think it ran through Labor Day. And we got a pretty good response for the surveys we've put out, over 500 responses. I think it was like 501. And that feedback, we asked them about the dimensionals, we asked them about location. Hopefully you all saw it and maybe took it. But I want to run through some of the feedback that we got on height. The most popular was a 3-story maximum. That's consistent with what's in town. That was no surprise. Open space, most votes said to keep it consistent at a 20% of the lot area. Setbacks, again, I think folks want to just keep things consistent at a 20-foot setback. Parking, we specifically asked, our standard is typically 2 spaces per unit. We wanted to ask about the idea of, could we reduce that if you're closer to the train station? Like our central business district reduces the parking requirement because it's near the train. And over 60% said that 1.5 spaces or less per unit would be appropriate within a half mile of the commuter route. So there was pretty good support for a slightly lower parking space requirement near the train. And then overwhelmingly, folks said yes to design standards and yes to a site plan review requirement. Affordable housing was a little surprising. because the most popular response was 10% is fine. We, we did get quite a few votes for 15%, and you'll see there was an other category, 8%, and that other included, why don't we do more than 15%? And then some people said, nothing, you know, or just no, or some folks were creative with their answers and telling us that they didn't want to have anything to do with it. So there was kind of a split between the 10% and 15%, and the conversation with the planning board so far has been that why don't we do the economic feasibility analysis, see if we can keep consistent at 15%. If that doesn't work out, then we fall back to 10%, and at least we're getting that 10%, but we'll try for the 15. And then ground floor commercial uses, overwhelmingly, folks thought that it was appropriate to allow the opportunity for commercial ground floors. So a split result on whether you provide an incentive for it, like additional height. That wasn't a clear answer. And then just before we put out this survey, HLC issued updated guidelines saying that towns could, in a portion of their district, up to 25% of the unit capacity, towns could require ground floor commercial uses in a portion of the district, but you're not allowed to have a parking requirement for those commercial ground floor uses. So we asked the question, okay, if we were to should we require ground floor uses even though we can't have a parking requirement for the ground floor commercial uses? And we got 55% of the respondents said that they would support that even though you can't require the ground floor to have parking. So interesting, and we'll get into that a little bit more. Locations, we were affirmed in our focus on existing commercial and multifamily areas. There wasn't support for looking into kind of single-family neighborhoods as suspected. For locations within a half mile of the train, we got a little bit of a split result there, but the way, if you took the survey, it was sort of a drag and drop ranking thing. And we had Main Street first on the list. So if you were satisfied with the way the list looked, you skipped the question. So if you count in the skips, I think Main Street would have been a little bit higher than Jefferson Road. And with the ability to do ground floor commercial uses, Main Street has been sort of more of a focus in the planning board discussions than Jefferson Road. Outside the half mile, West Street received the most favorable votes. We had a feature or an option to give us any advice on other locations that folks could think of, and we did get quite a few suggestions. Most popular maybe was why aren't we looking near the Anderson-Woburn train station? And we looked at that early on, and the way that the state maps the train, the half mile radius from the train, none of that half mile falls into Wilmington. So if it would have, maybe it would have been a different story, but it didn't. Concord, Fordham, the corner there where the Cummings property is, that was suggested, and we did look at that, but we would have to actually pull in more of the industrial property to the north, and then you get a really large district, and you're eventually displacing commercial industrial taxpayers, and it didn't turn out to be the best maybe option. Ballard Vale, Andover Street, lower Ballard Vale where the office buildings and Target and sort of the commercial area there, that is all within the groundwater protection district, so it wouldn't be eligible to be in the district. And then the groundwater protection district kind of does a weird design up there, so a lot of that area is off limits for the district. Deming Way was suggested by a few folks, and this actually is a interesting option that you'll see further on in this presentation that could solve some problems for us. Wilmington Junction, it is sort of a landlocked area between 93 and the train tracks and Tewksbury, and we looked at it to see if it would give us enough units, but it turns out that after speaking to the health director, it's really not an area that's suitable for residential use because of environmental concerns up there. Ames Street was suggested, but I don't know that the EPA would let us do that, so that. So taking all of this feedback and discussing it with the planning board, the dimensional aspects kind of fell into place with the survey results, and kind of in line with everyone's thoughts as far as a 3-story maximum height, keeping open space and setbacks consistent as to what they are today. Parking, 2 spaces per unit, 1.5 spaces within, closer to the train station. Affordable housing, 15% if that economic feasibility study ends up to be convincing to the state, or we fall back to the 10%, requiring design standards, site plan review, and then thinking through ground floor uses. And the planning board took those 2 most popular districts, Main Street and West Street, and we looked at those in greater detail to kind of hone in on how small can we make this district with and also get the numbers that we need to get. So I guess starting over here with West Street, this district, so the approved project at the corner, 100 West Street, is right here with these 2 parcels right here. And that was approved earlier this year for a 40B development. This is a single-family home here in between that 40B and the storage facility. And then jumping across the street, this is Regency Place. And these 4, well, I guess it's 5 parcels would make up that West Street district. So we've got 2 40Bs, 1 existing, 1 approved, and then a storage facility and a smaller kind of single-family parcel right here. And that unit capacity comes out to 654. On Main Street, we were looking at the area starting with Metro and then staying on the west side of Main Street, running up all the way to the Hyundai dealership up here. And when we first tested that, we did that with a little bit lower parking requirement. And when you apply the 1.5 spaces to this area, you don't quite get to, you get 514, you don't quite get to where we need to be with our total and with our half of it within the half mile. And there's a spreadsheet that you have to plug all of this into, and it sort of spits out your unit capacity. Whether that's what could actually be built, I don't think that's the case, but it's the way that the state is measuring your district. So we needed a little bit more area here to work with, and this is where Deming Way comes in. Deming Way is the parcel down here. So I didn't orient you before, but this is Church Street, Burlington Ave, Metro's here. So Deming Way is right here off of 62, and it is within the half-mile circle of the train. If you add that parcel, which you can, so most of the district has to be contiguous parcels. At least half of it has to be contiguous, and you saw in the other slides, we have 2 kind of big chunks that are contiguous. To count, this has to be at least 5 acres. It is. So it could be added to this area. And when you do that with 1.5 parking spaces per unit, you get 218, and you get above where we need to be with our total required unit count. And this would be coupled with the West Street option, same as shown before. So we solved that issue, and now we have to talk about sort of another option that comes up with the ground floor commercial requirement.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, Valerie, if you don't mind me, just a quick interruption before you go further.
Sure.
Because I'm a bit confused. On one of the slides, you said that Regency Place was non-compliant. But on this slide here, you're adding it in. So is it non-compliant, or is it,
So when
does it count?
when I say non-compliant, I mean it's not compliant with zoning, right? So the what's there today is, what did I say? Let's say it's 42 feet tall, right? So it's 42 feet tall. It doesn't comply with today's zoning. It's too high. If we create a new district and the height limit is 40 feet, it would still be too high. It wouldn't comply with the zoning, right? So that is only important in that we're keeping it non-compliant because we don't want to lose the affordability of it, right? So if we made a district that allowed those buildings by right, and we said you could be 45 feet and you're compliant, then they could say, well, we no longer have to be affordable. We no longer need our 40B approval. We can just do this as market rate because you created zoning to make us comply. So it can be included in a district, but still be non-compliant with the zoning. Because what we're concerned with is if Regency Place gets knocked down, right? For some reason in the future, if it's just kind of wiped away, what this zoning is concerned with is what could be built back there, right? So this zoning cares about the future, but we care about also making sure that what's physically there today is non-compliant with the zoning so that it stays affordable. It needs its 40B approval.
And the MBTA has an affordable component to it, right? Or it does not? This MBTA housing choice.
You don't have to have an affordable component to it, but you can. You can do a 10% requirement. Anything above 10%, like the 15 that we have currently, we have to justify with an analysis.
Seems kind of silly that the state wants more housing choice, but they're not going to make it affordable to individuals.
I think a lot of folks would agree with you.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding this ridiculous concept that the state is putting out. Okay.
Yeah. So, so here we were. Ground floor commercial. So, in August, just before that survey went out, the state said that towns can require, in this district, they can require a portion of it to have, a portion of the district can have a ground floor commercial use requirement. So 25% of our district, 25% of the unit capacity, and there's the math for you in this box. So this is our required unit capacity, 25% of that. We could require ground floor use for, and count 312 units. Thinking about the comments that we heard about some of the complaints about this district, about we don't want to wipe out our commercial uses on Main Street especially, right? And just have residential everywhere. When you look at, this is a really good change that they made to this. When you look at the corner, so this 433 Main Street is the corner of Burlington and Main, right where the train station is. It's where Big Joe's used to be. And then running up to the Hyundai dealership at 271 Main. Here's our 3-story maximum. And in that whole area, you get 339 units. So I just, split them up on their floors, right, for an illustration. If you take out that ground floor of residential and you make it commercial, then we would have 226 units. So the second and third floors would still count towards our count. And when 226 is less than 312, so we get to count all of those and require that ground floor commercial use in that stretch of the district. That's the idea. And the state approves these, and it's based on the wording at the top here. Eligible locations where existing village style or downtown development is essential to preserve pedestrian access to amenities. So it's our main street, it's our commercial kind of stretch, and I think we have a pretty good argument that we want to preserve our commercial uses on the ground floor. So they would be required to do a commercial ground floor to be able to do residential above.
I'd like to ask a quick question before you carry on. We put commercial on the first floor. We lose those units, so we'd have to add those units someplace else.
Yes, that's a perfect segue. So, a new problem, right? So, in discussing it with the planning board last week, their thought was we should definitely include the ground floor commercial requirement. It's it's kind of how you picture Main Street, right, with commercial and residential. So we have to make up some of those 113 units lost on that ground floor. And what we talked about was Deming Way currently has a parking ratio of less than 1 parking space per unit. Not all the folks in there are going to be driving, right? So thinking that through, it's owned by the housing authority, it's affordable housing, a lot of it is elderly housing. The parking demand there is going to be lower than typical. So we looked at, if you lower the parking requirement just on the Deming Way parcel, that'd be its own sub-district right there, to 1.25 spaces per unit, still over 1, so it's still more than they actually have today. We make up those numbers within the half-mile circle, and turns out that we get 245 with the lowered parking. We still have 401, even when we require the ground floor on Main Street. And then we have the same old 654 that we had at West Street. So we get to 1,300, higher than our requirement. And we also get to 646 within the half mile, just over our 624 requirement. So we would be looking at a ground floor commercial requirement from the corner all the way up to Hyundai. And then Metro would not have a ground floor requirement, and Deming Way would not have a ground floor requirement, and nor would West Street. And those would all have, so the parking would be 1.25 here, 1.5 for all of this, and then 2 for over here, where you're further away from the train station. So this is what so I should say the planning board members are also not thrilled with being forced to create a zoning district, as all of you have expressed. But they have kind of tried to create the best situation we can come up with, and they believe this is possibly the best proposal that we could put forth to bring to town meeting.
One
So-
quick question, sorry again.
Oh.
If you're looking at Deming Way, would a portion of those still be for seniors? Or will we lose the senior status on Demi Way?
So Deming Way would still be Deming Way, right?
Okay.
So the Housing Authority has its mission, and they would still be fulfilling their mission. It would just have a different ability on that parcel to do things. Yeah. So the timeline for this, here we are in October. We're hoping to possibly meet with a couple other boards, maybe the Economic Development Committee. I'm going to be sending draft zoning to Alex this week to look at. And then at the November Planning Board meeting, we're hoping to kind of finalize some text and get it into the state possibly the next day in November, because the state wants to have a 3-month window to review your draft zoning. And ideally, we'd have their feedback before we need to really put this in stone for advertising for town meeting in mid-February. So it's all pretty tight. We don't have to have the economic feasibility study done for the affordable when we submit the draft for the state to review. So we'll do that while they're reviewing it. Our housing consultants should be able to do that for us, so it shouldn't be any extra RFP or anything like that. So that should be able to be done over the next couple months and be included. So that's and then I didn't put on here, but obviously there'd be, Springtown meeting would be where we would kind of put this forward and see what residents think. So that is the game plan, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Mr. Kyra?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Valerie, thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of apartment places that are popping up now and wondering if they're included in this. Right on 129, is that Rachel Way or something? Over near AJ's, there's an apartment complex there, and then there's another one coming up at the corner of Woburn Street and Lowell, that where you're having, commercial below and apartments above. And then you have the one off of near Butters Row. You have also on the 62 bridge, there's apartments above commercial over there as well. So are we including all of those apartments in this?
No, so
Oh.
the district has to be, at least half of it has to be all contiguous. So it has to be all one clump of connected parcels.
Right, well, isn't the one on 62 where the bridge is? That seems to be connected,
So,
to me anyways, where it has commercial below and apartments above. Right, you know what I'm talking about?
Talking Princeton Properties?
No,
No, it's,
One Church Street?
One Church Street.
One Church Street.
Oh, yeah.
So One Church Street is
Thank you.
right here.
Yeah,
And I don't know if I have an image of the groundwater protection district. I don't. So the groundwater protection district comes up and covers all this entire other side of Main Street. So that's why we were sort of forced to the other side. So we can't have, in the groundwater protection district, to cover more than 15% of your lot, which is a very small amount. You can cover 15% of your lot as of right. Anything larger than 15% would need a special permit. You can't require a special permit for this district. So we're essentially
so we're just
Kicked
off
out of-
by feet,
kicked out of the groundwater protection district.
by a few feet there. Right, so we lose out.
Well, it's weirdly shaped. It comes up and covers some of the train station, which doesn't matter. The train station's not giving us units. And I could, how could I pull it up? I wish I had a map of it handy, but
But you know where I'm talking about, right? I would say the old Doyle Hardware, but I don't know if people remember the old Doyle Hardware.
yeah, so that portion over here is all within the groundwater protection district. And actually, Metro is weirdly, there's an island of it outside the groundwater protection district, but a lot of this is all groundwater. And then it goes down Main Street to the south, and, you know, it covers, those new apartments on Main Street, 635 Main Street, it covers that, and runs through there. So Church Street wouldn't be able to be part of it.
And the other side, the other district is what? That's
West Street?
West Street. And West Street, you're not, you can't include the new developments that are going on there on the corner of Woburn and Lowell Street and the Rachel Way. I don't know if I'm getting that correct. The one near AJ's. I mean, it seems like it's,
But we wouldn't have to include those.
okay.
Because with what we are showing here for the approved 40B, the existing 40B, and the self-storage facility, and then this connector piece, these parcels give us enough capacity to meet the requirement.
Thank you.
Due to the wetlands is the reason why you're not looking at Sweetheart?
Floodplain.
Floodplain, excuse me.
Yeah, floodplain. So all of that parcel back here, right, it's right near the train, you know, it in the future, we probably envision it as something different. It's all floodplain, and floodplain, development in the floodplain requires a special permit, so it's not an eligible spot. And that's the challenge of something that is kind of higher level, that doesn't take into all the intricacies of things, right? So we were kind of pushed away from that.
Bendel?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Ms. Gingrich, the gentleman from KP, thank you very much for the presentation and for being here. Obviously, this is of the utmost importance to all of us, and although my frustration is not directed at neither of you, I nonetheless still have some comments. On the last slide there, we talked about next steps. I wondered if at any point during the next steps, when someone who perhaps resides in one of these designated areas would be notified that perhaps they were being considered, that their household, literally, I remember you pointed out one particular area on West Street where you have mapped out one residence. I wonder when that resident and others would be notified during this process.
Yeah, that's a good comment. I haven't figured out exactly when, but we will work it into that schedule for sure.
I'd appreciate that. I think they would too.
Yeah.
Even if it's, obviously this is the beginning, but that this is a possibility. This is a strong possibility that their residents may reside in this location. Although that may not affect them today or tomorrow, that in the future it could drastically affect them. You know, mindful of over the years, these developments of 20 and 30 units that have caused people, caused an uproar in town, as you know. And now we're faced with 1,248, the possibility of additional units here. And so I can imagine what the reaction might be if you gained 1,000 neighbors within a half-mile radius. But I also wondered at what point during this presentation might we hear from our state delegation, seeing that this is an MBTA initiative, that this is a statewide initiative that's being pushed, for put a nice term, by our statewide elected leaders. I wondered if we were going to include them in there at any point. Feedback, perhaps an opportunity to ask further questions. I mean, obviously, I really appreciate these presentations because I don't claim to have a strong grip on this. And when people are bound to ask us, I want to make sure that I have the right answers. So I look forward to the opportunity to hear from our state delegation on this as well. I didn't know if that would be included at any point of the next step process.
Mr. Bendel, we had invited our delegation to one of our meetings, and I believe right now correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hull, that there's been a scheduling conflict. Is that?
There was a request back in September, but from a timing perspective, Valerie was still working through the process, so that meeting was deferred. Certainly, I can reach out to the delegation and see if they're available to come in to a future meeting. In terms of any action for the board tonight, I wouldn't suggest that the board necessarily needs to vote on this, but I think we do need a clear signal as to whether this is something that is palatable to the board, because if it is, as Valerie noted, there's a tight time window here. If the board is not outright opposed, stridently opposed to this approach, then the plan would be to, after final review by council, to send this off to the agency for their 3-month review, and then that, depending upon when that information comes back, that gives us just about enough time to have an article prepared for a special annual town meeting.
If it's, just two more, if I could
Go
continue,
ahead,
please. Thank you.
Michael.
Thank you for the clarification there, Mr. Hull. And for you, Valerie, just my last question for you is is there any intention of having a follow-up survey now that you've kind of narrowed this down? And I know you had the first survey, 501 people filled it out once or more with their first initial response. I wonder if there'd be a follow-up survey to say, here's what we're up, here's what we think needs to happen, and give people a chance to fill it out as a follow-up.
Yeah, I've been debating whether it's a survey or just kind of an informational campaign of some kind.
Or both.
Yeah, or both. But we certainly need to keep talking about this to get more people aware of it, familiar with it, asking questions about it. So there will be some sort of campaign to inform the public of what we're coming up with, whether it's a survey form or something. Sometimes when surveys are more informational, I've gotten feedback that they're like fake surveys. So I don't want to put a fake survey out, right? But it's such a nice way to get people engaged. So it is a good option. So.
And obviously, I recognize that's more work for you, not for me. So I appreciate if you give that some thought. But it obviously helps when we arrive in the spring at town meeting, and this will most certainly be a very hot topic. People will be passionate either way, and at least, that your office will be able to detail all the steps that you took to try to inform people, and in this being one of them. I obviously think you've done a nice job trying to inform people to the best of your ability, so I appreciate that. But certainly can imagine that if you lived in one of these zones, that you could be pretty upset. And so you want to try to give them the opportunity to voice that to our elected leaders, none of which are at this table that are forcing this upon anybody, but those who are. So thank you.
Bill?
Thank you. Thank you.
Stelling?
Thank you. Thank you for this. This is, I think that whole math problem should be like on the SATs or something, because I don't know how you did. I have a headache. But you explained it well, so I do have a grasp, although I did think we were going to get free from the 113 units. So, but I get it for now. So I think one thing we have to, Mr. Bendel actually he hit my question, which was about notifying people. And also, I think we have to be clear that, no one's being kicked out of their homes with this. Because I think it's scary, right, to say we're being forced to do something, we don't have a choice in it, and obviously if it gets voted down, then we face the consequences, whatever they may be. But just, I think it's important as we move forward with that, I'm sure you know this, but just want to kind of put it out there, that we let people know, because that example right there, just using, I know it's not the area, but the West Street, is that house, gonna be, bye, you need to get out. So, and we know that's not the issue, but I think it's scary for any resident to hear that this is becoming part of this zone, that the, state is basically, seems like they're taking over, I'm just kind of throwing in layman's terms, but, so I just want to put that out there to make sure that people understand that no one's homes or apartments or anything like that are being taken from them. Greg put it well, that, there could be 1,100 people being your neighbors, but that's the extent of that. And then the other question I had was, if, I wrote it down here, if the sewer access, private septic versus public sewer access, and some of these locations are different. Some of them have them, and some of them don't allow them, which could be a huge problem for the town. How do we deal with that? And if you're in a groundwater protected area, how do you handle the nitrogen loading capacity and things like that?
So the last one first, we've avoided groundwater protection district area. So there's a little bit of the MBTA parcel, that's, a lot of it is in the groundwater protection district, but that's not, no one's building on that parcel. So
Right.
I think we've avoided groundwater protection district issues with the zoning, with little sliver exceptions on two of the parcels.
Okay.
The sewer septic question, so this, one of the reasons why I made the comment that those numbers may not be what you can actually build is that. So their model doesn't take into account those questions.
Okay.
So-
More of the intricacies you mentioned earlier.
Right.
Got it.
So, it may spit out a number in the spreadsheet, but you may not be able to build that much because you're on septic.
Okay.
Right? So
What do we do then?
those,
We don't
well, it
know.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
As long as we're creating a district that their model says that we're in compliance, then
Okay.
it's okay. We don't actually have to create that number of units.
Okay. And my last question, and you may not know this at all, do we know of any other state that has done this? Is there been, are they taking, a cue from somebody else's playbook, or just as a reference? Do we know of any state that has done something like this?
I don't know of any. I mean,
Yeah,
other
no.
states are a little different in that they're
Yeah, I just,
they're like
yeah,
county-wide,
Yeah.
more
yeah,
zoomed out in their planning and zoning, and that it's not town to town.
yeah,
But I don't know of any.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you know how we all feel. I know how you guys are. It's so aggressive. It's just so aggressive, and to not even have an opt-out and, the threats of what can happen or what will happen if we, it doesn't matter if there's an opt-out or not, because at this point, because the punishment will be the same anyway, so to speak, because we can go through with all of this and bring it to town meeting, and it can get shot down, and then we're left, so it's kind of just it's a crappy situation to be in, I'm going to say it, so. But thank you, I appreciate all your work, and I think you've come up with, a very feasible plan, I mean, given a very tough situation, so I appreciate all the work. I'm sure this has just made you friggin' squirrely-eyed, so I appreciate it.
Valerie, I commend you. You're working on a project that no one wants. I take offense to the state for jamming this down our throat and then threatening us with the AG's office. That's Gestapo as far as I'm concerned. I do not like this at all. But you have created something that we can, since we have to, live with. I don't, I support the idea of Main Street 38. It is on Main Street, so if we're going to have residential and commercial on the first floor, at least there'll be a little more attraction to the area. And it's a shame that areas that we may have, we can't use because whether we're in the floodplain or however wet we are, welcome to the real world, Massachusetts. We're all wet. We're all wet up here. And and I don't remember who it was who said it to me, but someone said, every piece of parcel of land in Massachusetts has got a problem. You got to deal with it. Unfortunately, we're going to have to deal with this, but I am going to strongly recommend that we as a board and we as residents come down hard on our State House delegation to not only help us with this, but to support funding of infrastructure or any other place that we can see that we're going to need money. Why should the town have to cover the burden financially of this? I know we're not paying for the buildings, I understand that. But there's sidewalks, roads, could be sewerage. There's a number of areas schools, fire, police, everything's gonna be increased. And I'm hoping that when we get our delegation in front of us, that they listen to us and then don't roll their eyes and accept that they're gonna have to push for a lot of money for the towns that are being forced to do this, where other cities and towns are sitting back and just going, ha ha. But I thank you very much. I know, because I usually have a conversation with you once a week about issues in the town, that this is on your mind constantly, and I commend you and your staff putting this together so that we can understand it a little more than we have. There's still a lot I'm still trying to digest myself, but I think with your support and the questions we can ask, we're going to get through this mess. And that's all it is a mess as far as I'm concerned.
Chairman?
Thank
before
you. Go ahead.
Just one quick comment, and again, I agree with, the sentiments of the board as far as, yeah, this is being kind of jammed down our throats, and personally, I don't agree with it. But that all being said, one of the concerns that I have is that if we go for the ground floor commercial, we've got to now do ground floor parking in addition to, like you said, it's not part of the complex. So now are we, let's say that somebody comes in and says, I want a nice restaurant, 100 seating capacity. Now we're looking at, 100 parking spots designated to the commercial part in addition to the residential, which are they going to say, the developer or somebody going to say, well, we need to now make the units bigger, taller to comply to put more units in. It just seems like we got an issue there on the parking.
Yeah, so for parking, we did, so we can't, with the ground floor commercial, we can't have a requirement for that commercial to have parking. In some cases, it'll work perfectly because you'll have a retail store that's open during the day when maybe the residential units are working or out. So, in some, a lot of cases, you might have a good shared use there. But with a restaurant that's open at night when people are home, that's gonna be a little bit different. The thing about parking is that a lot of places are getting away from having a minimum parking requirement, because a developer typically will build the amount of parking that they need to build to have a successful development, right? There are exceptions to that, but where you don't have a lot of public parking to kind of spill out into, a developer's gonna build what they think they need for the market, which is good because we don't have to quite tinker with it. So I think that's the idea, that like a shared parking situation with the commercial and residential, and the state actually suggested a maximum parking number, like you can't build more than this amount of parking to try to get away from, large parking areas and too much parking. But yeah, there could be instances where they need more parking, and they might forgo uses that require a lot of parking to solve that. But if they're a good developer, they'll be working on that problem kind of within their mix.
Right. But I thank you for the presentation, and certainly attorney to help us out in the legal. And I too, Gary, would say that, Mr. Chairman, that, I want to see a state delegation here, because we've got a lot of questions that only they can answer.
We do. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Kyra?
Yeah, can I have a follow-up if I could? Valerie, this area that we're talking about is 50 acres, right? That you're talking about?
The whole thing is, actually, I just did the number, it's like 65.
Okay. And it's just around the train station downtown, the Lowell line, right? It doesn't include the North Station at all. This is, you're just doing this, okay.
Right.
So it also doesn't preclude a developer from coming in and buying up that land, right? Just like Mr. Bendel said, the guy on West Street, he might sell that land to a developer and make a bundle. Certainly, I would look at that. So we're talking about someone coming in here and could possibly make some lucrative deals with here in this small little area, put 1,248 units. So, does the town want to look at that, look at this and say, boy, okay, it looks good and it makes sense, but in reality, a developer could come in and scoop up that property on Main Street, right? And over near Deming Way and all that area, and just put up those apartments, right? So, and I know, is there a opportunity to split the 50 acres so that you're working 25 acres on the Lowell line and 25 acres on the North Wilmington line to kind of alleviate the potential of a smart developer coming in and making some great offers, and all of a sudden the town sees on Main Street 1,248 units. I'm a little leery of this is great, and you've done a ton of work, and I'm not asking you to, but have you looked at the opportunity of dividing that up? Because I don't know.
Yeah, so if I could just, on the Main Street stretch, that portion right here is actually only 401 of the units right here, from Metro up to the Hyundai dealership. And then Deming Way is 245. And then the other half of it, the 654, are actually over on West Street with the approved 40B down to Regency Place. So it's split almost half and half between the West Street sub-district and then kind of the Main Street area.
And if you looked at splitting that, can you split that 50 acres and 25 on the Lowell line and 25 on the north, and you might cut those units down in half? I mean, I'd rather see as little amount of units on that. I don't know, have you looked at that?
We had the two options of Main Street and Jefferson as the two options within the half mile of the train. So half of our district has to be within a half mile of the train, and then the other half can be outside the half mile. So in splitting it sort of almost half and half, with half of it around the Main Street station and then half of it on West Street, you're suggesting it could be maybe further split?
Well, I'm wondering, because this is the 50-acre radius you're talking about, right? I'm wondering if you can take 25 acres on North Wilmington's train station and 25 acres on the Lowell line.
Instead of the West Street?
I don't know, I'm just trying to throw that out there to see if the numbers all work out, but there is less density to either side. I don't know.
Chair, would, going into the North Wilmington train station area, Jefferson Road, would that impact more of the current residential area?
Bless you.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the, so the Jefferson Road option, we looked at where the Princeton development is gonna be located. But yes, you very quickly there get into residential, more so than on Main Street. And with the Princeton, the way those parcels are shaped, they front on Middlesex and Jefferson, but they go out very, very far in the back, right? And extend over wetlands to an island of upland that has a vernal pool, and the calculations take all of that area into account when doing the numbers, as if a developer could cross that wetland and develop the island in the back that has a vernal pool, and, you know, and it very quickly became a,
Well, isn't that a good thing? Because then they can't develop over there.
well,
So, and then we're
risk
kind of,
that though, so that in, you know, there's a certain amount
well,
of
if they
fill.
can't develop it, but it's part
Well-
of the,
I don't know if anyone
area.
feels confident enough to say that they couldn't develop it. That's the challenge, right? Because if we zoned it and they found a way to do it, I think then we'd have a lot of regrets on that front. And with the, you know, with the challenges with that, with the Princeton development, in permitting and, you know, it just, in discussions with the planning board, the focus turned more towards Main Street because it's where, you know, I think, that commercial ground floor, upper store residential feel is, more universal, I think, on Main Street than what people see on Jefferson. But we did have that as an option in the survey and, kind of, you know, through the process.
thank you.
Mr. Bendel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify a comment I made earlier, I recognize that not everyone in town is opposed to this, and in fact, based on the survey, there certainly are a lot who are opposed, and reading some of the responses, I can't say many of them on TV, but we got a lot of feedback. But I would imagine, I want to be clear that there are people who do favor this idea, and that, you know, as was mentioned by my colleague, that if you have the opportunity to cash in and sell your property, your single-family home, to a developer to develop a 3-story, 4-story building, potentially, that it may be difficult to turn that opportunity down. And although your neighbors might not like it, you could see that how quickly that scenario could multiply very quickly throughout that district. So I know this is starting off as, well, we'll just draw a map and we'll draw some lines to designate an area and submit that to the state, but, you know, nothing's going to happen overnight. It may happen faster than we think, if that's the case. So I just wanted to clarify that, you know, some people will favor this, and not everyone shares my opinion that this should not happen. So thank you.
I want to thank you very much. You've enlightened us again with this. I know we'll be discussing this many, many more times. You know, just thank you. Thank you very much. This is going to be a hard one. This is a tough one to swallow, and I just want it done right. It's going to be tough. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate everything you do for the town.
Just to be clear, at this point, the plan will be finalized, or at least finalized in a draft form, so to speak, and then submitted to the state for their 3-month review
Mr.
on the conversations
And
this
Mr.
evening.
If I could just question for Mr. Hall through that. So that will be submitted to the, within less than a month. I believe that's about a meeting away from now. So there will be no opportunity to ask questions and have a delegation here. I just want to clarify that.
I don't think so. And certainly the delegation, as a practical matter, I think it may be appropriate to have the delegation here to voice concerns, but I don't foresee, and certainly Valerie or perhaps Attorney Wysech may have a different opinion, but I don't foresee this legislation being significantly modified anytime soon.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
And now it's communications.
Under communications, first item is a memo from me to the board outlining the budget process. We had a department head meeting just shy of a week ago, where the capital improvement plan instructions were submitted to departments to begin the budget process. The expectation would be that those get turned in to Brian Perry, who is really the person that leads that effort, in the beginning of November. A similar memo will be going to the department heads later this month with instructions with respect to the operating budget. That deadline would typically be the beginning of December. All of this, as you know, ultimately distills into the budget presentation, which needs to be made to the board and the finance committee at least 90 days in advance of the annual town meeting, which would be slated for May 4th. It would be my recommendation that the board consider, doesn't have to, this can be a topic for a future meeting, but consider, as the board has in the past, establishing a standalone meeting for the budget presentation January 29th, which would still meet the 90-day requirement. And then immediately following that, the meetings begin with the Finance Committee throughout February into early March. Also, just a note, the town finance director and accountant, Brian Perry, will be starting the process for pursuing a permanent borrowing for the town school admin and the senior center, as well as the Nassau Avenue water tank. There'll be a requirement to prepare a significant amount of financial data for Standard & Poor's. They'll review the town's bond rating and hopefully at least reaffirm it, if not upgrade it. So all that is going to happen over the next few months, and I would suggest that if board members have particular priorities that you believe need to be included in the mix, that those conversations be had with Mr. Perry and the temporary town manager between now and perhaps the middle of December. Sure. The next one is town manager search request, a memo from me.
Just for FY, I want everyone to know that George Hooper has removed his name from contention for the temporary town manager's position. Go ahead.
So this is a memo just noting the process for a request for proposal. Rob Peterson, the chair of the town manager screening committee, did a significant amount of work in essentially piecing together, I think, proposals from other communities to develop in my estimation, a strong document. This was posted on October 4th in the Town Crier. It's also on the town's, on the MMA, Mass Municipal Association online site to seek consulting services to assist the town in its search for a new town manager. As a request for proposal, there are two elements to this. Proponents will need to submit both a price and a non-price proposal. The deadline is October 25th. The price proposal is, as it states, what the cost would be for the services. That price proposal remains sealed until the town manager, the temporary town manager, receives recommendations. The non-price proposal essentially identifies what the firms will be doing for the town, for the board, outlines their approach, their background. It would be my expectation that the screening committee, once those non-price proposals come in, would review them, perhaps set some interviews up with a select group of proponents, and then make a recommendation to the town manager, the temporary town manager, and the select board. At that point, the select board may choose to do its own interviews, and ultimately, the temporary town manager or town manager, as the chief procurement officer, is the one that makes the award, but I would imagine that the board will want to have some say in terms of who should get that nod. So that'll presumably unfold over the next few months. Next is a memo from me with regard to authorizing the use of property by local nonprofits. So this came up at the last.
Mr. Chair, can I go back to the town manager recruitment? Did we, it may have slipped my mind, did we approve that at our last meeting?
I believe we did, didn't we?
I know it wasn't on the agenda, right, because the
We told them that they did.
chairman, but we,
Yeah.
okay, we did approve, okay. Good. I just wanted to make sure.
This item, this last item, came up at the last meeting, discussions about the various groups, I think largely support groups for some of the high school athletic programs and programs in the high school in general, looking to do car washes, and the suggestion was something be considered about trying to at least establish some parameters around those requests. So the suggestion for the board to consider is that perhaps, similar to what has been done with the groups, you'll recall that were seeking to have road races and so on that required road closures, there was a policy established that groups looking to do that had to have their requests in by October 1st of a given fiscal year for the following fiscal year so we could budget for it. This isn't so much of a budget issue as it is just giving the various groups an opportunity to have access to the town's resources for car washes. So the thought would be perhaps setting a window of between October 1st and the end of December for these groups to make their requests for the following April to end of September, early October for their various car washes. As you know, with the construction of the town school admin building starting in March, that area is going to be very limited, and so we've talked about allowing the folks to use the public buildings headquarters, which I think would accommodate.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move for a short recess.
So moved? We'll take 5. All those in favor?
from Allison Bedard from the Mass DOT, noting to the board,
I'm going to call the meeting back to order. Go ahead. Do I have to vote, or- All those in favor of, do I have a motion to call the meeting back to order?
Motion.
I don't think it's,
All in favor, 5.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make a comment on that last memo. Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Hull. On the last memo.
Fundraising?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say that I appreciate the memo, but I just feel like this is one of those areas where people want less government, less policies, and that we ought to take these up case by case. I can understand the spirit of this idea, but you know, I intend to vote no on this because I think every case is unique. I think these school and these nonprofit organizations, you know, depend on this money for fundraising, and I don't think we should make it any more complicated for them than we have to, and I think we should ought to take them up case by case and not implement another policy.
I agree with you, other than the fact that as soon as school's out next year, they're gonna be tearing up the parking lot, and there's a lot of work that's gonna be going there. So this way, we have the facility. It would probably end up just being a temporary until we get the school parking lot back into service. And it won't be into service till September. And at that time, from the way I understand it, and Mr. Hall, if I'm wrong, correct me, it'll be a binding surface at that time. And we have all the construction going on. I think for 1 year, to get us, so there's not more confusion up there, wouldn't hurt us for a short period of time. That's my opinion.
If I could just respond, I would just say that, you know, I'm mindful that obviously a year, that's totally understandable. Obviously, there'll be construction, there will be disruption, some sort of disruption possible. So, again, I think that those nonprofits that make that request within that 1 year are case by case. So I don't know if we need a policy, we can just give them notice that this might be the case, and you might want to plan accordingly, therefore we don't need a policy. But I guess we
so
can debate that.
just to be clear, I think that we're still going to be able to accommodate these groups even during this construction period on the premise that the public buildings headquarters can now host these events. So this policy, whether it's adopted or not, was really just an effort to try to provide some parameters around the timing, but I understand the point.
And Mr. Chair, to this, to the point, I think that what the challenge is going to be is that you have the Friendship Hall right beside the facility, and we can't predict when that's going to be utilized or booked for an event. So that becomes the problem, no matter when we book it, whether we book it a year out or 6 months out. If they have an event on that same day as the car wash, there's gonna have to be some accommodations made for the Friendship Hall. So,
Next, under communication, is a letter from MassDOT, Allison Bedard, with regard to a status on the overpass at 93 on Woburn Street. The 100% design has been completed. Work will begin in the spring to preserve and reinforce the existing overpass, which includes replacement of pavement, sidewalks, repair of curbing, railing, and fencing. Also includes repair of the superstructure and the steel framing under the bridge. Again, that's slated to begin in the spring of '24 and be completed in the fall of 2025. Also, we have an email from Christopher Kelly with the EPA, Region 1, with regard to the Olin Chemical Superfund site, noting that the U.S. District Court has approved the consent decree, which was filed by the Justice Department. This is a follow-up, you'll recall, to the record of decision that was issued in 2021 that detailed certain requirements for Olin and the other companies, responsible parties, essentially, they're obligated to spend just over $48.2 million on remediation associated with various elements of the work. There's so-called operating unit number 3, which is the groundwater, really, I think, is probably the most significant part of that, and that still remains under investigation, but certainly this is good news that they're able to proceed with this work. Next is a memo from Verdantis, who is our environmental consultant. They also essentially summarize some of the points, noting that the court decree obligates the parties to honor the record of decision, which establishes final remedies for operating units 1 and 2, which are the soils above the water table, both on-site and off-site, and notes that that this work will be going forward. We have communication from Melanie Morash, who is another representative from EPA. Both Melanie and Chris have been serving as the project coordinators, and this just reaffirms that they'll continue to do so after the consent decree. Now we're on to board to consider. The first item was our previously voted on. Now we're at board to consider appointment of temporary town manager contingent upon negotiations.
Mr.
I'd
Chair?
like to, before we
Oh.
get into that, I'd just like to make a statement over this.
Oh.
As we all know now, Mr. Hooper has removed his name from consideration. I would like us to take the original request, and if we do not come to a understanding or agreement with the names that are on it, then go to our next in line, so to speak. And the only reason I'm saying that is that we gave everyone an opportunity, all managers in the town, to submit their names. I am,
Mr. Chair?
yes, sir.
I understand what you're saying, but I see it a little different, because this is, we started the process one particular way, and we had individuals' names. We voted on an individual who eventually withdrew his name. Now, this becomes a new process as far as I'm concerned, so it doesn't reflect on the old process that we had. The Board of Selectmen can certainly do what it wants to do in the best interest of the community. And with that, I make a motion that we appoint Lou Semaglia as the temporary town manager.
Second for discussion. Thank you. With all due respect to Mr. Semaglia, I know you've been a good and faithful town town employee for many years, certainly a capable department head. Again, we started out the process, well, number one, we started it back in June. We got Jeff's email, his letter of resignation, or retirement back in June, and here we are, October. I'm kind of disappointed in the fact that this process has taken as long as it has. But we originally asked the assistant town manager for a letter of interest. We got that letter, then we said, okay, we're going to throw it over to the permanent town manager selection committee, and they threw it back at us and said, no, we don't want both, the responsibility of both. And then instead of going back to our assistant town manager, what did we do? We asked for all, any department head that's interested. We got 3. We got the police chief, the fire chief, and the building superintendent. I specifically asked the question, I said, okay, if we elect one of those 3 individuals, who takes over? And nobody had a problem with the fact that if we hire the police chief, as an example, the deputy police chief becomes the temporary police chief. The temporary fire chief becomes the fire chief. We have an acting, I'm not sure of the term because I know the the building superintendent, because I know there was an appointment made subject to George's retirement, and that person would take over. These are assistants. And then we say, oh, well, it's great that we could have the assistant take over for all these positions, and I'm assuming, with all due respect to Mr. Semaglia, that if we were to nominate him as the acting town manager, your assistant would take over as acting veterans agent until you pop back into place.
Technically, he is the veterans agent. I'm the director, he's the veterans agent. He is the BSO.
Okay, but the point of the matter is, for all those 4 department heads that expressed interest, we have no problem letting the deputy or the assistant take over that position. Here it is, we have a capable assistant town manager that when Jeff's not around, Jeff, you took off for a week or, whatever, our town, she becomes the acting temporary town manager in your stead. I've talked to many of the, not all, but I've talked to many of the department heads, and the department heads all tell me, we don't have an issue with Susan. She's she's a capable person. Mr. Hull, hold on, Mr. Hull, I believe that when you're out, do you have any issues with her being over for the time that you're out?
No.
Mrs.
So-
Palmer, can I get it? I'm tired of hearing, with all due respect, we've had this conversation a million times. Just because someone is the assistant doesn't mean they're the right person. I don't not believe that Susan Inman has been with this town long enough or has the experience to take over this position. This is my opinion at this time. This does not discount her from applying for the job, but I do not think she is ready to do that. Her filling in for Mr. Hull at a week's time, she is acting. She's not doing his job to the full tilt that Mr. Hull does his job. She's doing her job and taking over any responsibilities needed while she's there. And I'm sure she does a good job. I haven't heard anything bad. My opinion of not putting her in is I don't think just because you're an assistant to anybody that it automatically puts you in that spot. You have to earn it. And I do not think she's been here long enough to earn it. I do not think it should go to her just out of default. And I will also say, I totally support Lou in this position. But I will also say, there's no, to my knowledge, any, bylaw, and correct me if anybody knows different, that we have to put it out there, that somebody has to apply. I could walk up to anybody and say, hey, you'd be great for the town manager, would you like to apply? Any one of us could do that. So I think we have to look differently at this and get the right person in here. And I like Susan, I don't mean it as, I'm just being honest. I do not think she is the right person. She doesn't have the historical experience, even in her previous jobs, to walk into this job. I just do not think she is ready. That's my opinion. And like you, Frank, I think this is taking long. I'm tired of belaboring this, and I understand your position, you understand mine. I think we need to move on and just figure this out. So it's just, we're going round and round.
There is a bylaw.
Well, not when I looked and asked the attorney.
You gotta look at the town charter.
Okay,
And
well,
if
you
I-
know everything.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, if I could come back to that. When we talked about Susan's experience, now Susan's been here for 18, 20 months now. I believe she was an assistant town manager in a different town in Boxford, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff?
Yes,
And she was there for a period of time?
10 years.
Right, now, what experience as assistant town manager does,
Not
Well,
assistant town
she
manager
wasn't
for
an
10
assistant town
years.
manager for 10 years, let's make that
Okay, which-
perfectly clear. She was an assistant town manager, I believe, for less than a year.
Yes.
But
but the
you-
point I'm trying to make is that when we go on experience, how much experience does the chief of police have in town management government, on the town side of government? The fire chief, the veterans director, the building
I think they have
superintendent.
Well, all
more
of
than
them-
she does for the town of
yeah,
Wilmington.
all of them more than she has, and plus they're all, with the exception of the police chief, residents of Wilmington, and they know Wilmington inside and out, so.
Our town manager is a resident of a town outside of Wilmington.
Also
I know
worked for the
that,
town
and that's
for
a problem.
30-plus years.
That's been a problem, as you saw in the town crier, him making some remarks that was detrimental to the board. Unfortunately, he made them. But
Okay, let's, one second and you will. Right now, let's get it all aired out and let's get it resolved now. We won't leave here until we have
Well, we have
made
a
our
you have a motion and
recommendation.
you have a second,
We have a
so
motion
we can
and
take
we
a
have a
vote on
second.
it.
Discussion.
Yep.
Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I share my colleagues' frustration, and I think people who are watching at home want action tonight as well. Let's be clear about that. But, you know, I'm equally disappointed about this. I just want to, for the record, so that people know, you know, I wasn't made aware that Mr. Hooper had withdrawn until Saturday when I called the chair and he was nice enough to inform me. I didn't receive a memo, a phone call, an email for anything from the town offices. I just opened my packet to find out that we were considering these 5 individuals again, which got me scratching my head saying, why are we, I thought we left it off as we had appointed George Hooper. So I was perplexed and equally frustrated on Saturday to find out that he had withdrawn. I want to repeat that I think that all 5 of these individuals are fine individuals, and I believe strongly that a number of them could do this job very well. But I think tonight that there's a great choice here for us, and we ought to act on it tonight, because I think people are tired of hearing about this. I think people want action from us. They want to feel comfortable knowing that we have somebody in place when the manager retires, and that we can move on, because I feel like we have a great screening committee, and we ought to let them get to work so that we can move on to the next chapter in this community. I think that's what people want. So we can talk about, you know, who's done what and who might be the best to do that all night long, and clearly we've been doing that for a few meetings now, but I think the time for action is now. People are tired of hearing about this.
Mr. Sleglia?
The only reason I put in for this is simple. I love this town. I've been the Director of Veteran Services, Veterans Officer for almost 19 years. When I see a problem in my town, maybe it's my military training, I step up. I like to step up. Board of Selectmen for 9 years, 2 as chair, 4th of July Committee for almost 20 years. I just feel that the town right now needs help covering for, I'm not saying I'm gonna come in and do Jeff's job from day one. But I know that I can take care of it until the committee does their thing. And as you saw a department head here tonight, we have some very capable department heads. And I've been able to work with them for almost 19 years. And I think we have a pretty good relationship, and I think Jeff has built a relationship between the department heads where it will help me to help you. So the number one reason is I just feel like the town needs help, and I'm stepping up. I didn't know if the other gentlemen were asked again after they found out that, you know, they were back up for it again, so I don't know if you
Yes, they would.
invited them, so I don't know. But that's my reasoning, and that's why I'm here tonight. So thank you.
Mr. Sleglia, I have just one question,
Yep,
and I believe you do understand I have a lot of respect for you and everything else. Your department is small.
yep.
With you stepping away to concentrate more on the manager's position, will your department be able to cover what they're doing?
Absolutely. I was out for months with my knee surgeries, 2 knee replacements. They took over. Mike is aces on the VA, and Patty's got the state stuff down pat.
Thank you, sir. That's all I wanted
Okay.
to know.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, since you're taking
Not open to comment.
comments
No,
from the audience.
I took it from a candidate only, sir. That's all I'm
I
taking.
just wanted to mention
Nope.
about the town charter and
Nope.
ask Mr.
It's
Howard
already been done.
to
I
address
asked you not
the
to.
qualifications.
I
That's all.
asked you not to.
It's about a legal matter.
Everything's a
Relative to
legal
the
matter
town
with
We're
you.
gonna take a vote, since there
Yes,
was a
we'll take a
motion
vote.
made.
I'd like to, one other comment that I'd like to make. Again, you know, I'm going to vote no on your appointment, Lou, and it has nothing to do with you personally. It's just, like I said, to me, I think we're setting a bad precedent, with all due respect, if this goes through, that, you know, what are we telling our other assistant department heads? You know, if you're, you know, if the department head is leaves or is incapacitated for some reason, well, you might get it, you might not. Maybe one of your employees will now become your boss. I'm sorry, I vehemently disagree with this process. I think that we should have had an interview process with all candidates, be it, you know, the chiefs and whoever else was, you know, so that we know what, you know, what each candidate brings to the table. I mean, what we're doing is that we're just saying that, you know, with due respect to Mr. Semaglia and the other candidates, the knowledge base that we perceive that we have. So, and with Ms. Inman, you know, she has procurement, it's just, this whole process doesn't
Well-
make sense to me. And like I said, with respect to the vote, I'm voting no. Has nothing to do with any of the candidates.
Just one quick thing. I can hear what you're saying, but at this time, this is October 10th. We have 17 days to put a town manager in place, or the town doesn't run. Simple as that. There's so many things that have to be signed off. I want it done tonight.
You take some more time and get legal advice rather than just,
Excuse me, sir.
it's a legal.
We've already been discussed with the league, so don't. That's all I have to say. There is a motion on the floor. It's been seconded.
If I could just make one final comment to that point, is that I'll only argue that the town will continue to run as long as we have the fine employees that we have.
It will.
Absolutely.
And
But there's things we have to, the town manager has to sign off on.
no question, but I just want to
That's
point
where
out
I'm
that we have
concerned.
a lot of good
Won't
people that
stop.
work for this town, and some of them are being, and all of them being considered tonight are good employees as well.
Absolutely.
Right.
Oh,
And
no doubt
I
about it.
want to make a point as well, is that the fire chief and the police chief, both excellent individuals and department heads, are vitally important in public safety in the positions that they're in.
Yes.
So that's, and I've said that over and over again, not that they're not capable of being a temporary town manager. I believe that their importance is with their department.
I concur.
And to that point, I think we ought to be mindful that this could take longer than we expected. I mean, I, at one point, was criticized for saying this might go to town meeting. Every day that goes by, that looks like maybe a possibility. I hope not. And with the screening committee we've put together, I think that they will act quickly and they'll be very effective. But we have to recognize the possibility that whoever we put in place this evening could be in this position for up to 6 months.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Then I'm gonna ask for a vote. And the vote will be to the appointment of Lou Siniglia as temporary town manager pending negotiations, as we do all the time. So, that's the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It's 4-1.
And Mr. Chair,
Now, one thing before, sir, if
Yep.
you don't mind. I am calling for a executive board meeting, February 13th, at 4 o'clock.
February?
February.
I was like, wow, jumping real ahead.
October 13th, to discuss the perimeters on the negotiations for a temporary town manager.
I will not be
That's
available
Friday.
October 13th. That's this Friday.
Yes,
I have a charity that I'm involved in, so I can't.
we've,
But I would like to, if I would throw Lil,
Yeah.
Ms. Maselli in, because we were part of the negotiation team for the prior candidate. Would like to volunteer as the subcommittee again. We've had conversation with Joe Fear, so we're familiar with the whole contract aspect of it. And I do understand that the board wants to, give some direction, and that's probably
Yes.
why you want an executive session. But in the meantime, maybe we can reach out before the executive session, at least have beginning talks.
yeah, I would like an executive session so that we can discuss the perimeters, and so that we can move forward readily and fast. Hoping to, if we need to, we'll call for a board meeting, special board meeting next week for the appointment, so that if everything goes according to plan, Mr. Siniglia will be able to sit down with the town manager and start seeing what we have that needs to be done.
Chair, if I could just respectfully suggest that you have the manager's office poll our availability after the meeting. That way we can
Okay.
arrive at a date that's
Certain, or
certain.
whatever. Then that would be for 2 meetings, for an executive meeting and for a special select board meeting, so that we can vote on it, get it done, and,
Vote on what? I'm sorry, I'm confused. Vote on,
we did, well, no, wait a minute, we already voted on that.
I think, just a suggestion here, it sounds like, and certainly, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's one meeting that needs to take place, or at least initiate, between the subcommittee and Mr. Semaglia to negotiate terms and conditions. I guess the other question, which I got the sense you were perhaps thinking about, is having a meeting of the board in its entirety to have some consensus over what the offer should be.
In executive session.
In executive session, those
Yeah,
would
that's the only-
both be
yeah.
executive sessions.
That's
Mr.
just
Chair,
what-
would that be or after our meeting, or pre? You're
Pre
saying
our
pre?
meeting with, pre the meeting with Mr. Semaglia.
Okay.
So we're,
Aligned.
all aligned, thank you.
Got it. Okay.
So the intent then, just so I'm clear, is that we will poll the members for these 2 meetings, the first being a meeting of the full board in executive session to discuss an offer, and then the second meeting of this, to be of the subcommittee with Mr. Semaglia.
Yes. Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
The second meeting is what?
That would be your negotiating meeting. But we'll have an executive meeting ahead of time to get the parameters down, and then, and then you and Lil,
Mr.
Lil
Chair, can
will
I,
set up a meeting just to negotiate.
Okay, so we don't need that to be acted upon, because that's gonna be based upon
Right.
our availability.
Right.
right.
All you want is the first executive session to give us some direction.
Right.
And then we can figure out
And then we'll-
what days.
Right.
Okay.
And we will poll after the meeting to see when everyone would be available for that. And then, as far as the negotiating sessions, that's up to
Yeah.
the 3 of you to sit down and negotiate.
Fair enough.
Okay? No, we don't have to vote on any of that, so.
Right. Okay.
Chairman, I move that we take no action on number 8, having previously just discussed it.
Second.
All those in favor? No action. Now we're on 9.
9 is board to consider including an article on the May 4, 2024 annual town meeting warrant to change the name of the Woburn Street School to the Richardson Elementary School. You'll recall, this was submitted by a resident, Daniel Ballou Jr., and just bringing this forward for the board's consideration, whether you want to act on it tonight or...
I'd like to push
Yes.
that off to the next meeting at least.
Mr. Chair, if I could just make a comment, I would suggest that we take no action. I'll only speak for myself, but we, through the process that you're well aware of, this gentleman who has written to us, which, by the way, I have no reason to believe it's not true, has every right to just go through the town minute process, the town meeting article process, and can submit this. I don't know if this board is prepared to endorse this without more information.
That's why I
And
was
certainly, people are welcome to disagree with that and are welcome to vote for it if it comes to fruition as an article, as a resident. But I wonder if we should be endorsing this without more information. I'm surprised to see this here, given that we only have a letter from a resident, which I value, but I think if it's a decision that's going to be of such magnitude, that we ought to investigate a little bit more before we endorse it as a board. People are, again, welcome to disagree with me, and certainly welcome to endorse it as an individual. But I would caution that we taking action on this specifically at this time.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would agree with Mr. Bendel's comment, and plus, we're going through an MSBA process where the Woburn Street School could be decommissioned.
True.
So, we don't even know yet, you know, so I
Yeah.
don't think we want to name a school after someone whose school won't be there anymore, right, so.
Do I have a motion to take no action on this?
I move that we take no action on board to consider number 9.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? No action will be taken.
Next is the board to consider requests of the community groups to conduct events which require road closures. So there are three requests before the board. The first being the request for a road race. This is the Soul Sisters Running Club, Saturday, December 14th, 2024, 10 a.m. To 11 a.m. The routes of each of these is essentially the same, starting at the Common, going down Wildwood, Federal, and then back.
Move to grant the request.
Second.
Are we granting all three of them at once?
I hope so.
Yes.
Okay. Just checking to make sure.
So the July 4th committee's running 2 road races, is that what I see?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do I have a motion? I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? And it's in support.
Next is a board to consider policy for authorizing the use of town property by local nonprofits, organizations for fundraising events.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we take no action, we do not adopt a policy, and that we, as I mentioned earlier.
Second for discussion.
Go ahead.
I'm in agreement with you, Mr. Chairman. I understand your position, Mr. Bendel, but I think that, the problem we have is that I think, if we just, the town manager's office has a calendar. We give people, such and such a parameter, because what you don't want to do is that have 3 organizations that say, I want September 25th or something like that, all at the same time, and, now, could we be running into situations like that? I think that, if we have some control and say, look, we have some parameters and say, here's when you can file, so that somebody doesn't say, well, we're kind of doing our thing, but, we don't really want to think about it until July. Well, and then they find out that they're out of luck. So if you kind of telling everybody up front, here's your parameters on when you can pick dates for next year, pick them.
I can appreciate that perspective, but I think we've made it over 200 years without a policy. I think we'll be okay without it if we continue to take up them case by case.
Okay, do I have a motion to
Not adopt.
not adopt?
We already have a second with discussion.
I
It was
did.
already done.
I
No
did, I
action.
second.
Oh, it was?
Discussion.
Frank
Motion.
did a
Discussion.
second with
Oh, I'm
discussion.
sorry, I didn't realize it.
Not to adopt.
Oh, not to
Not
adopt.
to adopt
Clear,
it.
just, yes, I believe, forgive me, I misspoke to start, but my motion, which was seconded by Mr. West, was not to adopt a policy,
Correct.
and that to take them case by case.
All those in favor? Opposed?
Next is a board to consider the request of Beth Rooney, Secretary of Wilmington High School Touchdown Club, to conduct a fundraising car wash at the Public Buildings Department on Sunday, September 22nd, 2024, from 9 a.m. to noon, the rain date being Sunday, September 29.
Do I have a motion?
Move to grant the request?
Second.
All those in favor? It's adopted.
Next is board to consider the request of Louis Simaglia, Director, Department of Veterans Services. The Wilmington Town Common be illuminated in green during the month of November in support of veterans.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Next is a board to consider the request of Louis Simaglia, Director of Veterans Services, to use the Town Common on Saturday, November 11, 2023, for Veterans Day ceremonies, invitation for the Select Board to participate.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor? Approved.
The last board to consider is the meeting schedule for December. Typically, the board meets just once in December, which, in this case, the date you may want to consider is the 11th, I believe, which is a Monday.
Does anybody have any objections with December 11th for our December meeting?
Look here.
I don't think so.
an issue?
Not yet.
All those in favor of? I do have-
Motion to
I
make.
don't have to have a motion, do I?
Motion for December 11th for our December meeting.
I
Second.
have a second. All those in favor? Approved. December 11th, 7 PM. Public comments.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you.
Name and address.
Kevin McDonald, 140 Andover Street. I tried to speak earlier to offer some input. I didn't come here to speak about that. I came to speak about a potential financial impact on the town. But with regard to the town charter, I've read the town charter many times, and I think Mr. Hull can affirm that the town charter specifically speaks to requirements of a town manager. And so I would like to see each member actually read the town charter to actually look at what those specific requirements are that are laid out in the town charter before you take any vote on anybody. This is nothing against any candidate, but this is strictly a legal matter and a town charter compliance. So what I rise tonight to speak about is a potential looming major financial impact on the town. And I spoke to the assistant town manager today. I've been aware of the town's insurance, the fact that the town is self-insured for employee health benefits. I found out today that the town is also self-insured for their vehicles. And they also have an insurance policy for police and fire injuries with a company called Dowry. And I rise tonight to share with you a documentary, some information from a documentary that I recently watched, and it's pertaining to consequences from the vaccines. And I
Mr.
would,
Chair, excuse
What
me.
vaccines?
This is supposed to be public comments. He's
Yeah,
standing
this
for
isn't-
the
yeah,
board.
yeah.
This is not public
No,
comments.
yeah.
You're supposed to comment on anything that is being presented in the meeting.
well, this pertains to the hiring of the town manager. This
No, it
particular,
does
No, it
not.
does not. I can get-
it's a,
take care of
it's a
this.
financial
No, it
impact.
does not, sir. This is public comments. What have we spoken about today, you can speak about. But other than that, I'm not getting into this
I believe-
suddenly rumble.com.
I believe there was a budget, a line item on the meeting tonight that was relative to the budget. And so this, to me, is relative to the budget. And I share with you because I've been recently made aware of some town employees that are negatively impacted as a result of the vaccines with negative health consequences. And I rise because I believe that's pertinent to our budget because
Sir,
we're
Sir,
self-insured.
Let's do it this way. Let's start out with this. If you want this addressed, you send us a letter on what you want to do, and then we'll decide whether we put it on our agenda or not. But I'm not going to sit here and, again, listening to some people get sick, some people don't get sick.
Okay,
And it's just, it's not in our purview right now. So-
The other item that I think is pertinent to this meeting is the fact that two police cars crashed into each other.
Yeah, we know that.
They're-
What's it
Well,
pertaining to? It's not pertaining to anything.
the issue is the town is self-insured for vehicles. I
Yeah.
just wanted to get some answers from the town manager.
Again.
Mr. Hull,
Again, it's not on the agenda, sir. We
it's
deal with,
public comment time.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest, certainly, again, public comments, people can offer comment. There's no obligation for me or any of the board members to respond. And, you know, if the board is so inclined, he can offer his comment and then take it under advisement.
This is why I think it pertains to the meeting tonight, since one of the agenda items has to do with the town manager being hired, and the ability of the town manager to deal with these very serious issues in town. And so when it comes to the various aspects of the duties of the town manager, one of the aspects has to do with financial impacts. And when we're looking at building some major projects and the impact on the people of town with taxes and the constraints that our laws have with Proposition 2.5 and limiting the amount of money that people can be taxed, I think this has to be taken a look at. And when there's a looming crisis, such as consequences from the vaccines, I was just made aware of a firefighter who actually had to retire before his time. I have to check on who that was, but apparently we have a
I'm not gonna get
situation.
into name.
I'm not mentioning any
allegations.
names. I'm just mentioning the fact that when it comes to hiring a manager, he has to deal with some very, very serious aspects of administration. And Mr. West, I highly respect your point of view on recognizing the need for somebody with experience in a wide array of managerial duties. And the fact that other department heads do not have a problem with our assistant town manager was a very wise thing to seek out and to share with this board.
Well,
And
let
so-
me, Mr. Chair, just let me interject there, Mr. McDonald. I did the same thing Mr. West did, and I don't know who he spoke to, but the department heads I spoke to did not give me rave reviews of the assistant town manager.
Okay, well,
I'm not
the-
gonna,
the fact,
Just
Mr.
saying.
Mr. Kara,
Mr. Cara, wait a minute.
In all due
I'm not
respect.
gonna get in a debate over that. That's an issue that is basically done, and
It's
I'm
not
not
done.
gonna sit here.
Here's a negotiation.
I'm not gonna sit here and listen to hearsays and allegations and attacking someone's person, or,
I don't think I've attacked anybody here tonight, have I, Mr. West? I don't
you
think
don't
I've
have to
attacked.
ask Mr. West.
Who have I attacked? I haven't attacked anyone. You're saying like I'm attacking
No, I'm
people.
not saying
I'm
you
basically
attacked
trying to
anyone,
share with the town some serious looming problems, and if we have an out-of-control health crisis that raises the town's financial responsibility and therefore thus impacting projects to be able to get financed and funded because of a limitation that the government has on a limitation of the taxpayers and their commitment, I think it's a serious matter, and I think it's worthy of a discussion. I'm asking you to simply take the responsibility as the chairman who sets the agenda, because this chairman does set the agenda, and I would like you to set the agenda to have a discussion for a proper analysis of the insurance so that we can look at the financial responsibilities that the town has to keep it in constraints within the ability of the taxpayers to pay and the compliance with the Mass General laws. And the fact that you don't want to listen to the issue of consequences of vaccines when a town is paying millions of dollars. Mr. Hull, let me just ask you a simple question. Can you share with the board and the town what the deductible is on stop-loss insurance?
You can,
This is a public comment period. You offer your comment.
Okay, so it's about $150,000 when it used to be $50,000. So before the town gets one single penny from the stop-loss insurance company, a claim has to go over $150,000, which means the town is on the hook for every claim of $150,000. So if somebody hurts their finger, that's one claim. If somebody hurts their foot, that's a different claim. It's not cumulative. So this is a huge issue when people are having myocarditis, blood clots, and other serious
who's had
problems.
those in town?
Well, a firefighter who's probably the best firefighter in
Raise your
town.
voice at me, pal.
Can you hear me?
I'll throw your,
I'm not looking to get thrown out. I'm looking to share some information, and you
don't
keep
raise your
interrupting me.
voice.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you clearly.
Well
Let me
then,
tell you, pal.
well then, let me tell you something. We have a firefighter that I was made aware of, that I'm gonna be finding out his name, that has consequences as a result of the vaccine. And so I just had a simple question for the town manager. Mr. Hull, is it true that you told people, or you established a policy, that they had to get the vaccine or they would get fired?
We're not gonna, this is public comment, you make your
I'm just
statements, and
asking
then
a
we'll
simple
take 'em under
question.
advisement.
The
We'll take it under
manager,
advisement.
the manager is the head of the
We will
town.
take it under advisement.
What is the, are you willing to come back and share with the town if the policy from the manager's office was to compel people to get the vaccine or they get fired?
We'll take it under advisement,
Mr. Chair,
sir.
I'm going to excuse myself because I don't have time to waste here listening to this.
I
when
did
it
have a
has nothing
question
to
for you,
do.
Mrs.
He's asking
Maselli.
us
No, this
I'm
is-
not going
this
to
is
answer
it.
anything for you.
I just had a question
You are
because
out of line, and I'm
one
not
of
going
the
to speak
questions
with
that I
you.
had pertained to analog. and I
That's my
underst-
personal
No,
life.
this
I
is-
will
I
not
understand you
answer.
work for Analog,
No,
and
that-
our fire department responds to gas
it.
leaks and leaks in
That's it.
Analog. And I was told that
Thank
they
you
have
very
leaks
much,
every
Mr.
week, and they don't get reported
Thank
to
you
the
very
fire
much.
department.
You have a nice
I'm just
night.
simply
It's
asking
over.
you if our fire
over.
department is at risk going to Analog because they have leaks. You don't want to share with
I'm not
them?
here as an Analog employee. I'm here as a select person.
And that's
If you
it.
have a question for Analog, you can call.
I'm asking you, since you're a selectman.
I
Can you
am
get
not
us-
an Analog employee sitting behind this desk. I am a select person.
Would you please get us the answer to that
I
question?
will not. I am not. It's a conflict of interest. Okay.
Really?
That yes, it is. I don't
You
answer on.
represent the town.
I don't represent Analog to the town.
You represent the firefighters, you
I do
represent the
not
public safety
represent
personnel.
the job that pays my family's food.
Thank you.
housing,
Have a
and
nice
everything,
night.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for your attention to this matter.
Good thing
Yep.
no one in town likes you.
Uh,
or
go-
believes anything you say.
Good
Go
night.
eat
Good
some
night.
ice cream.
Yeah, why don't you go fuck yourself? Can we get the police here so this guy doesn't attack any of us? If he's gonna be here, I am not. I'm done with this shit and him.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Do you want to just go through the,
No, let's get out of here.
okay.
Make sure that Lil's coming.
Yeah, that's why. Make sure. All those in favor? 4-0.